How big are Terraria's bosses? Not just in Terraria, but in real life. Imagine on ground level, you on the first person view. They actually look intimidating? How much larger would they actually be compared to you? I mean, in Terraria, the sizes of many things aren't really emphasized due to your view of the Terraria world being limited in a 2D space zoomed out of your character. I am sure that even some of the smaller bosses like King Slime and Eye of Cthulhu would look a lot larger than you might expect. So in today's video, I will be measuring boss sizes, specifically King Slime. I will be comparing it with various real life things such as buildings, trees, and I'll be illustrating them to really showcase what this boss would actually look like in real life. I'm jpallgraphic, and this is Illustrating Terraria Bosses, Part 1. Now you may be asking, how are we going to measure King Slime? And how are we going to convert those measurements into real life measurements? Well, that's a very good question. Let me take you to one of Terraria's accessories, the compass. The depth meter. As you can see below my health and mana bar, you could see the depth meter display. Right now it's saying 404 feet surface. Now it seems that depth is measured in feet. If we want to measure the height of one block, pay attention to the depth meter display. When you go down or up one block, the value changes by 2 feet. That basically concludes that one block is 2 feet, height and width. Now if we're going to measure things in Terraria using blocks, I'm going to use a ruler here. As you can see, this tree is more than 12 blocks, this tree is more than 14 blocks. You can see that I am missing a few pixels. Actually, I think this tree is 13 blocks. Not everything in Terraria borders exactly a block. As you can see, these sunflowers are around 4 blocks tall, but it doesn't mean they're both exactly 4 blocks tall. I mean, maybe this one is obviously not 4 blocks tall, it's shorter. I mean, just look at this cactus. If we measure it in blocks, it's probably around 1 block, more than 1 block. But we did not account for the pixels above 1 block. So if measuring in blocks isn't reliable, we could measure in pixels. Now most Terraria blocks are 8 pixels wide and 8 pixels tall. We can divide 2 feet by 8, and then each pixel is equal to 0.25 feet or 3 inches. With that in mind, let's start off by measuring the character's height. So each pixel equals 3 inches. 3, 6, 12, 24, 63, 66, 69, 72. Now if we convert 72 inches into feet, that's basically 6 feet. So this character is basically a 6-footer. And through a quick Google search of possibly reliable information, Terrarians are just shy of 3 blocks tall. Now the reason why this Reddit post states that the character is around 1.7 meters is because it doesn't really include the hair. That's probably the accurate height of the Terrarian. With that in mind, I measured King Slime's dimensions over here. Measuring them in pixels and converting them to inches, converting them to feet, and also in meters because I'm sure most of us are metric boys, not empirical dudes. And from this measurement alone, the height of King Slime's entire body, not including the crown, is 4.11 meters. The crown is around 2.13 meters tall. That's actually quite tall, to be honest. The thickness at its base is 4.19 meters or 13.75 feet. But at its widest, it's around 6.10 meters or 20 feet. And that's pretty much it. Although I kind of forgot one measurement. The total height of King Slime, including the crown, is 5.48 meters. Now these measurements don't really mean much if we don't compare those measurements with other things. Real life things. So here I have a height comparison chart where I'll be comparing King Slime with real life animals and things. As you can see here, here's the height of a Terraria player, which is actually the same height as an actual 6 feet human. And right next to it, we have a giraffe, the tallest living land animal, at 17 feet. And as you can see, it's a little bit taller than King Slime's body. Now, giraffes are very tall, with their legs being taller than a human. And if we replace this giraffe with King Slime, you can see that King Slime is no joke. You can see here we have elephants. As you can see, King Slime without the crown is a little bit taller than these elephants. King Slime is also around the same height as a one-story house without the crown. It isn't as tall as a two-story house or some of the tallest apple trees. But still, do you want to see this in your backyard? Now, we measured King Slime and compared it with real-life things. But I feel like the size of this boss isn't really emphasized yet. We can't really get a full glimpse of what would King Slime actually look like and how big it really is, especially from a human's point of view. So in the next chapter, I will be illustrating a boss fight between King Slime and the player to really emphasize the size of this boss. To start off, I made a sketch of all the important parts of the artwork, like King Slime, its crown, the slime spawn, the background, and the character. Now to be honest, I wasted 45 minutes on this just because I wanted to make the outlines look as perfect as possible, not realizing that most of these would actually be covered by the base colors and details and stuff like that. So yeah. The only part of the artwork that will still have its outlines kept is the character, as that will be the focus point. As you can see, I am outlining the character's armor, which is going to be fossil armor. Now, let me be honest here. I have never done this before. Making characters? Yes, and it looked horrible. But incorporating armor sets into characters? No. To be honest, I really drew character illustration, mainly because I didn't really study any concepts relating to it. And the last one that I drew before this was 4 months ago. And just by looking at it, there are many things that I would criticize. And now I have to incorporate armor into my characters? With all of the perspectives and details and lighting and shadows? Basically, I'm illustrating something that I really suck at and making it harder for me by incorporating something else that I also suck at. Yeah, this is going to look horrible. Anyway, I started off with the outlining of the armor, and after a bit of fiddling around because I didn't know what I was doing, at least I got some shape and form, mainly using geometric shapes for now. Although I did start adding the final outline to the helmet just because I wanted to really see if incorporating this armor was actually worth it. I guess it was. I mean, this helmet looks pretty simple. It's just a dinosaur skull with a bunch of horns attached to it. I mean, this is a lot better than I expected considering it's my first time, but there's the rest of the armor to do. Well, we'll see about that. Next thing I did was incorporate the armor to the body of the character. Using a ton of references really helped me out here, making sure that the proportions are good, sort of. The armor looks decent, especially with incorporating segments. And eventually, after way too much time and effort, I ended up with a pretty decent looking armor outline. I even added some pre-hard mode accessories. And that's pretty much 2 hours. This is 2 hours of progress. Anyway, let's start adding the base colors. This is going to be in grayscale, with the foreground elements being darker and the background elements being lighter, with the lightest part being the sky. Then I detailed the sky, added a sun, modified the background. As you can see, this is going to be a mountainous area over here, inspired from Terraria's forest backgrounds, which I started to detail. After detailing the mountains, I started detailing the rest of the ground. Initially, I wanted this area to be quite hilly, but it didn't look really good. And when I mean didn't look really good, I mean I didn't really know how to treat it well with the rest of the background. So I just removed it and changed it. Now it's just a line of trees. I also added another landscape form behind these trees, which I detailed. Then I detailed the trees. Now since the sun is up ahead, I wanted the shadows from the trees to head towards the foreground. but it took a while for me to like the shadows because it kinda just looked weird. And while that was happening, I added more details to the trees, like some lighter values. After that, I added some fog on the mountain and hills to create some depth. Then I added some flowers on the grass, a whole patch of flowers on this side with a sprinkle of other flowers on the rest of the grassland. Looks like we have the background sorted. Now it's time for the main attraction. Okay, let's start off with the blue slimes. The first thing I did was add the base color to the slimes, which is blue, and cleaned up their form. Then I started detailing the slimes. I made sure that the lighting that I incorporated into these slimes makes the slimes look smooth and gelatinous, kind of like jelly. Now for this slime, since this is going to be a spiked blue slime, I added some little spikes jutting out of the slime's body. Well, for this slime, since it's behind King Slime, and King Slime blocks most of the direct sunlight coming from the sun, this slime is going to be darker. Oh yeah, I also detailed the slimes that are coming out of King Slime. Alright, let's detail King Slime. Now, one of the main references that I use as a guide to help me make the lighting look accurate is the Calamity mod sprite of King Slime. Initially, I started off with more rough looking lighting, which I will slowly refine later on. For now, I added the cast shadow and started to make King Slime more transparent. Basically, I made it so you can see what's behind King Slime, like the rest of the landscape. I made the edges of the slime a lot more transparent in the center, especially those near the sun. After a bit more refining and fiddling around, I moved on to the crown. It's metallic, so I detailed it appropriately, making sure that the lighting and 3D form of the crown is present. I also made a reflection of it on the surface of the slime. Then, I detailed the gems. Pretty simple. We'll get back to the ruby though. The lighting reflections and refractions aren't really accurate. The next thing I did was make the slimes coming out of King Slime look more like they are part of King Slime, but they're also coming out of King Slime. It isn't really as seamless as I thought. I will probably refine it later. Anyway, let's finish the rest of the artwork by adding some blades of grass, detailing the cast shadow, and incorporating some cast shadows to the rest of the slimes. I nearly forgot about those. Would you look at that? Everything is taking shape. Now, most of the artwork is complete, except for two main details. The ninja inside King Slime, which hasn't been illustrated yet, and the character, which I've procrastinated for long enough. And you know what? Let's just do it. It's time to complete this artwork once and for all.